Welcome to the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast, your main resource for 2QB fantasy insights, smart bets, and winning props. Hosted by Fab, Knack, and Rod.
We are less than a month away from the 2025 NFL Draft, and it's time for us to dive into our positional breakdowns of this year's prospects. Starting at the QB position today, is Cam Ward the consensus number one pick? Should Shadour Sanders go second, or will we have an Aaron Rodgers-like drop? And what do we make of Jaxson Dart's rise to first-round prospect after being mocked to go in day 2 or 3 for the entirety of the college football season? We're going to give you the scouting reports, best case and worst case scenario comparisons, best fits, where we think they'll end up, and best fantasy impact for them and the rest of the class. I'm Raj, and joined as always by Knack and Fab. Please subscribe, like, and follow on YouTube, Spotify, and podcast platform of your choice. We'll be doing positional deep dives every week this week with the QBs, running backs next, and wide receivers, so on and so forth. But before we dive into the QB class, a big domino fell over the past week and even yesterday. Jameis Wilson.
What are you trying to hear? You need a Miss Fab impersonation?
Jameis Wilson.
That's my line.
So Winston, 2 years, $8 million deal. Wilson, 1 year, $10 million deal that then could turn into $21 million with incentives. So Fab, you are the golden retriever of the podcast. You are the biggest apologist of the Giants I've ever met. Please, my dear friend, explain to me, what are the Giants doing and what is their plan?
Okay. So this is this is probably plan C for Joe Schoen and company. I think they wanted to go after Stafford. They wanted to go after Aaron Rodgers. In my opinion, this is the best case scenario that could have happened for the New York Giants as a franchise, and I'll explain why. We know that the team is not perfect. We know that the team is very far away from competing. We know that the team is missing a lot of holes. I much prefer spending the money that they spent on Russell Wilson and the money that they spent on a very good backup in Jameis Winston, and continue to plod the holes that they need to plod in the draft and save that money for other free agents and other prospects later on in the year. Now, with that being said, the QB room right now, I know the bar is very low. It's in the ground. It's probably 6 feet under. Okay, that's how low the bar is right now.
Can you go? How low can you
This is unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how we look at it, this is the best QB room the Giants have had in a very long time, and that says a lot about the dude. Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito last year. You gotta tell me that this room is worse? It's on par, if not better.
If it's on par, what are we doing?
What are we doing? What's available? What's available though? Like, what were we going to do with Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers? Win 8 games? That's exciting.
We're going to win less now?
Well, yeah, sure, of course we're going to win less. Better for
not.
The answer for the Giants at quarterback is not Russell Wilson, nor is it Jameis Winston, and quite frankly, it wasn't Aaron Rodgers and it wasn't Matthew Stafford. It's going to be in the draft, whether it's this year or next year. All this does is just confirms that, because now we don't have to wait 2 years. If we would have signed, let's say we would have signed Aaron Rodgers for a 2-year deal, because I think that's what he's looking for. I don't think it's going to be a 1-year deal necessarily, or even trade God knows what for Matthew Stafford. How much more years wasted will we have with hoping for a 9-win season, hoping for an 8-win season, with the offense that we have, with the defense that we have, which, yeah, the defense got better from last year to this year with the signings that they did in free agency. So to me, they fell into this situation because I guess it didn't work out with Stafford and Rodgers. And in my opinion, from a franchise perspective, going forward for 2026, because you're going to punt 2025. We already knew that at the end of last year, we were punting 2025. That was a foregone conclusion. This doesn't change anything for them from a draft perspective. I think if Sanders is there, I think they should draft him, in my opinion, as much as I would love to see Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, wear the Giants colors, because they're fantastic stud players. I like Sanders as a quarterback prospect, but let's just say from let's just like use a crystal ball here for a second. Let's say they don't draft Sanders at 3, right? And we're going to get into the quarterbacks later on in the
Yeah,
year.
exactly.
Let's say they don't draft Sanders at 3. They take best player available, and that's Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. You got a stud on defense. We all know what having a good defense does to a team. We saw it with Philadelphia. We see it with Kansas City every single year.
I mean,
But,
Philadelphia has
I,
Hurts and
but yeah,
KC
like
has
No,
Fab,
hold
Mahomes.
on a
Fab,
second. I'm not done. I'm
you
not
think
done. Let me finish.
we're not contenders.
I understand that. I'm saying, but we see what good defenses do to teams, and you still need a good defense to compete. You need studs across the defensive line. You need studs across in the secondary, and then let's say we pick our. I don't care where we pick our quarterback next. If it's a second round, third round, whoever it is, the whole, and then 2025 is a dumpster fire. We go 3-14 again, or we go 2-15, or whatever it is. Clean house completely, which is probably what's going to happen. Shane is gone. Joe Shane is gone. Dable is gone. And then whoever comes in picks their guy at quarterback in 2026.
Knock, the floor is yours.
Oh my
2025 was
God,
a punt, anyways,
I
guys.
was
It was a
about
punt.
to. I thought I was forgotten over here for a second. I just kept going. Yeah, I
You
don't
know
know.
I'm wrong.
As Roger said, I think you're drinking you're drinking some different type of
Okay.
Kool-Aid than a lot.
Convince me otherwise, please. I want to hear this.
So, so my number one thing, I was thinking about this a lot today with Winston there. I always knew from the beginning they signed Winston to that small deal. It was backup quarterback money. He's no more than a backup to me in the NFL. His stats kind of prove that. But then you go ahead and you sign Russell Wilson, and obviously Russell Wilson expects to be the starter. Now, let me to give you a scenario where you do draft Shadour Sanders. You are telling me that Daddy is going to be okay with Shadour Sanders being number 3 on the depth chart, being the emergency quarterback and inactive on every Sunday of the year for 2025.
You're going to tell me that the whole basis of your argument is how Deion Sanders is going to feel about him being drafted?
Yeah, because he won't let him go there. We know
Oh,
how he's going to have
okay.
influence.
I
We
thought
know
this
how
was a
he's gonna
serious.
have
I thought this
influence.
was a serious podcast. Really?
And it's gonna have an impact on the team morale.
Um,
Like it's I don't like how are you handling how are you gonna carry 3 quarterbacks, man? Like it doesn't, and if you're drafting him, and anyways,
I don't
I don't
see
want us to
it's
get
going to
I don't
work.
want us to get too deep into the QBs because we're gonna talk about it. Nak, who do you think would be the week 1 starter though?
Russell Wilson, without hesitation of a doubt. Whoever they draft, no matter what happens, Russell Wilson starts week 1. I said it from when Winston was signed. I believe he was not going to be the week 1 starter. It was a guarantee in my mind. And honestly, like the numbers, like he had 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He had 2 pick sixes. 5 of the 7 games he started, he threw at least 1 pick. He had 3 games where he threw 3 picks. Um, Turnover central. Like I don't know, that's what you were looking for in a starter. Like, yeah, sure, no risk and no biscuit, but he turns the ball over way, way, way too much. Then you have Russell Wilson last year, like decent season, but not great. Definitely fell apart at the end of the year, which is, I guess, one of the reasons why Pittsburgh did not want to sign him. Just under 2,500 yards, 16 TDs, 5 INTs, which translates to 25 TDs and 8 interceptions in a 17 game season if he's healthy. But I mean, both of those quarterbacks are on their 3rd team in 3 years. There's a reason why teams didn't sign these guys, right? Like, why did Winston take so long to sign? Why did Russell take so long to sign? 3 teams in 3 years is quite telling, and I don't know how it's going to work. Like, people are still saying that they have Sanders still in their sights, and that's who they might want to get, or they're going to target a quarterback still at 3. I just don't know how that QB room dynamic is going to be with 3 guys in that room, and Sanders obviously going in as most likely number 3 to start off.
So I think when we get to the QBs and we get to Shedeur and the fact that the Browns are very much in play, I think we're probably going to rekindle this discussion in a few minutes.
And just
Yeah,
if I
go
just add one thing, Fab, you mentioned that the QB room got better. Ask the Steelers how that went last year when you had like lame duck guys on 1 year contracts and
exactly.
having to turn it over the year after. I think they've turned it over now full room 2 years in a row. I think that's the best comparison I have is like they had both of them last year. They fumbled it.
I
It
agree
was
with that.
and it was a controversy really all year, right? Like Fields was not happy that he was benched, and like who knows what happens. It's just then you add Shedeur to the. I don't know. It's just it's a weird dynamic for me in my opinion.
And you know what that does, Knack? I find that makes the QB play safe. Like I've said it all year, right? Like Russell Wilson played super safe. It was either moonball or check down. Same thing with Fields. Did not want to throw the ball downfield. So we're gonna touch upon this way more along the lines of the show once we really touch into the QBs. But I wanted to just quickly get both of your thoughts on Diggs to the Pats. 3 years, 69 million. Basically, it's a 1 year. It could be in theory a 1 year deal where he gets $26 million guaranteed. Knack, what do you feel about this deal for the Pats? Do you feel they finally got a wide receiver that they could rely upon?
Hey, look, at first when I saw the numbers before we saw the guarantees, I thought that they overpaid a little bit, especially for a guy coming off an ACL injury. Uh, and look, I think they got desperate and they needed a guy, right? And that was the best one available at this point. Look, I think if he wants to mentor young guys and whatever, and now, like I said, once we saw the guarantees, I have no problem with this. They needed an alpha on that team. They needed someone on the outside. Definitely going to help Drake May for sure. And Diggs was on his way to a very productive season before he got injured. So, yeah, I got to say, all in all, good deal. I like it. And like I said, like you just alluded to, if it's pretty much a 1 year deal. So if it doesn't work out, they can get rid of him next year and move on.
Yeah, he was on pace for over 1,000 yards. I think he was at 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, through 8 games. So again, a very solid season, and we know how much CJ Stroud struggled last year. So
Mhm.
let's see what happens with Drake May. Fab, any thoughts? Quick thoughts on Stefon Diggs to
No,
New
they
England?
needed to do it. I think it was a bit of a desperation move, but then again, I think it also fits very nicely too. I think this is going to be the best wide receiver that Drake May has ever played with in the NFL by far. So it's going to be definitely beneficial for him too, and even from a fantasy standpoint. This does give a bump, in my opinion, to Drake May, maybe more than it does to Diggs. Uh, but I like this move for the Pats a lot. It makes
And
sense.
yeah, and like May kind of has that Josh Allen type profile in terms of how he plays until his escapability. So I'm sure Diggs will be able to transfer some of his knowledge from working with Josh onto Drake. So we're going to move on to the quarterback class of the 2025 NFL draft. So we're going to start with Cam Ward out of Miami, Heisman finalist. So again, we're going to go through best case, worst case scenario for these guys, give you guys some relatively real life comparisons with current or ex NFL players, and then we'll go through the strengths and we'll go through the weaknesses, a scouting report, and some best fits for them from a fantasy perspective. So, with regards to Cam Ward, he just had his pro day a few days ago. Looked really good. You know, a lot of kind of bootleg type stuff that Zach Wilson did. Obviously, you know, no one wants to get catfished from that again. But for me, when I see Cam Ward, the first thing I think of is that release. It's a sidearm release. He looks like a pitcher throwing sidearm. So I got a lot of like a more mobile Philip Rivers from a comparison standpoint. Jordan Love as well in terms of like the arm slots that he uses, really ability to push the ball downfield, a little bit careless with the ball from time to time. Some worst case scenarios that I saw were Charles Robinson and Matt Harmon of Yahoo mentioned either Zach Wilson, but I thought Jameis Winston was actually a really good one. Whereas there were times during his college career, whether it's at Washington State or at Miami, was a bit careless with the ball. So right now he seems to be the projected number one overall pick. Most mock drafts have him going to Tennessee. It sounds like most of the Tennessee brass was at the pro day, and more the smoke is really showing that he's going to go to the Titans. Fab, what are your thoughts on Cam Ward? Do you feel he warrants this consensus number one overall pick?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he's the best passer in the class, to be honest with you. I think I like the comp to Jordan Love quite a bit. You, his pro day was really nice to watch. He really hit every single throw that you're looking for right now. He was really hitting them on the money. I like the fact that he's gone through a few different programs, and I like the fact he was able to succeed in various different programs and in various different colleges too. And he's had a nice body of work as far as games played is concerned as well, right? So I think it's I think easily or firmly within the number one overall pick contention, number one quarterback off the board. I think the Titans are going to have a very good starter for a long time too. I think what's his name? Will Levis. Will Levis is not going to be a thing of the past. Honestly, I think the worst thing that could have happened to Will Levis was the Titans not trading out of the first overall pick.
Nak, what do you think?
Yeah, I had actually a comparison to early Deshaun Watson days. He's pretty mobile, like
Yeah,
he
I like
is, kind of throwing with Deshaun Watson. The Deshaun Watson we knew before, pre-massage. Elite playmaking ability. He does have good playmaking ability, so he can create explosive plays. Excuse me, when things break down, but the things that we saw is his footwork needs a little bit of refinement. What I liked actually in his pro day was the last little shot. He did a little Philly special, which no one's done before, which was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I saw
He
that.
actually
Yeah.
caught a pass, which was pretty funny. Um, he tends to hold the ball a little bit for too long, so that's going to be an issue in the NFL. I find something you can correct, so nothing like it's not going to be too crazy, but. Um, Look, he's a consensus number one pick for sure, but in a weaker class than let's say we had last year. And again, we know how the QB position dominates these drafts, especially lately. So
So Nak, where would you have picked him if he was in last year's class? I'm really curious to know your thoughts on this.
so obviously after Caleb, after Jaden, after May, then you get into who was picked right after them. Was it
JJ,
JJ after?
sorry, no, Penix, and then Penix, JJ, and then Bo Nix.
Right. JJ is the thing, like
It's
maybe
hard to
picked him before
judge.
JJ. It's hard to judge. We
Yeah.
didn't really see him play, so he's off an injury. I don't know. Maybe right before Penix, maybe. But I don't know. I really like Penix, so I'm not sure. Like he probably would have went fourth or fifth QB off the board last year, I would say.
So
Mm.
go ahead, go ahead, Fab. What do you think?
I see him. I see him in the same spot as Drake May. I see him around
Hmm.
there. I think Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, the ceiling is much, much too high. But from a passing perspective, I really see him in the same level as Drake May. Penix, we didn't see enough of him. And JJ McCarthy, obviously, like apart from what he did in practice, where he threw like 40
Yeah.
touchdowns, which was fantastic, but it's practice. We're talking about
But even
practice.
but even JJ, it was a pro style offense at Michigan, but he did not need to throw the ball at all. They were heavily
Yeah.
reliant on a running game and heavily reliant on, a few throws here and there, and they're a really good defense at Michigan. So JJ is one where like there's a lot of great talk about him, but I would kind of agree. I would pencil in either between Penix around the Penix JJ area. I think what
Yeah.
he has over Penix is the escapability.
Mhm.
I don't know if he ran the 40. Cam Ward did at his pro day, but like I know Penix had a really good 40. It was like 4.46, but he never showed that escapability. Hence, kind of the issues he had in the national championship game. So, I think with Ward, you really hit it in the head, Knack. It seems like a lot of these guys they hold the ball too long these days.
Mhm.
Like whether it's
Yeah.
like Caleb had the same thing, right? You go through the list. Like a lot of guys now are holding the ball. We're gonna talk about it too, obviously with Shedeur. But do we really think the Titans are the best fit for him? Is there anywhere else? If you look at it, maybe from a fantasy perspective, obviously from the realistic selections that are available within the top three, is there anywhere else as outside of the Titans that we would have maybe preferred him from a fantasy standpoint? Day one, thinking in a 2 QB league.
The Giants for sure. You at least have the prototypical,
One.
WR1. Then who else was looking for a QB? You could have had. I would have liked Vegas better too at 8.
Hmm.
Vegas
Oh,
could
Mm,
have been a
Kelly would have been
yeah.
fantastic.
yeah.
That would have been a better fit. Titans. It feels like it's a boring team. I feel like no QB is good for the Titans. It seems like a boring team. And they have what? They have Ridley there.
They
Yeah.
There's
lost to
not.
Kine.
Yeah, and there's really not much there. So I don't. I don't know. Like
I could
consensus
have
number
seen
one,
it.
sure, but I feel like he's gonna struggle mightily in year
So
one. I don't think he'll have much fantasy relevance.
No, I
re-
agree.
re-
Relevance.
Relevance, yes. That's actually a great point because I've seen people say that the Titans should trade down because they just don't have the roster for him. I know they made some improvements on the offensive line. There was the guy you alluded to, Nak. I think was it Dan Moore who got was that his
Mhm.
name? Who
Yeah.
got like $80 million, 40 million or so guaranteed, who wasn't a very good offensive tackle. So I don't know if the infrastructure is really there for Cam Ward to succeed as of day one. And if you're gonna go in that situation, you have to be Fab, your favorite word, force multiplier. I think Cam Ward is that.
That's your
I
word,
think
bud.
thank you. I think he's that, but I think it might be a bit of a struggle as of day one. Any lasting words on Cam Ward?
I think he would do better in Cleveland than he would do in Tennessee, to be honest with you. I know
Oh,
that's a bit of a stretch, but Cleveland do have a decent offensive line and they have arguably better weapons, both from an offensive perspective.
because they've shown they could develop a quarterback.
I'm not saying it would be better from a
Stefanski has.
development standpoint, talking about
Stefanski has.
fantasy knack. Let's stay on point here. I think right off the bat over here, he would you can argue be better QB2 in Cleveland than in Tennessee. But yeah, I don't like Cam Ward going to Tennessee. Sucks for Cam Ward, in my opinion. But it's another
Well,
conversation.
yeah. Well,
They're missing a lot. They're missing a lot. And I know they have Calvin Ridley, but then who else do they have?
Chigakonkwo.
Sure.
You love your
still on
tight ends.
Chigakonkwo season.
My
We're still on
God, you and your
Chigakonkwo
tight
season.
ends. Him and the one from New Orleans, bro. The
Juwan,
best
Juwan,
tight ends, Juwan
Jennings.
I
He
love
got
me.
paid this offseason, man. Put some respect on his
I
name. He
love
got
me a
paid this
mediocre.
offseason.
I love
Yeah, he
me a
got paid
mediocre
way too
tight
much.
end. I love me a mediocre tight end. Pause.
Yeah,
Let's move on to Shadour Sanders. My guy, Shadour
the
Sanders,
pièce de résistance.
out of Colorado. So I'm curious what you.
Colorado State or
Colorado. Just Colorado this time. Just Colorado.
It's Colorado, man.
He transferred from last week to this week.
So Shedeur, curious what you guys think. So best case scenario, I put late career Geno Smith because of the ability to really stay in the pocket, tough as nails, and kind of hit dagger throws downfield. Nak, I know you were laughing at this one, but poor man's Joe Burrow. I saw a lot of Joe. Not only did I see a lot of Joe Burrow comps, but there's the fact that he's started many games in his career. I feel he's cerebral. He has that cerebral ability like Joe Burrow. And guys who are somewhat athletic but don't rely upon that and are fairly accurate.
And it's funny, I put it in ChatGPT just to see, and one of the comps was Joe Burrow light version. So
Hmm.
I'll
I
give
did
you your
not use
flowers on
I
that
did
one.
not use ChatGPT.
No, and I know you didn't. That's why I wanted to give you your flowers and I have seen it elsewhere. Not to be quite honest. So maybe you're right. Maybe I saw a
Again,
lot of
poor man.
also Dak Prescott ish pocket passer, thrower downfield type
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, I read that too.
I could see a lot of Dak Prescott in him, but look, he's got elite accuracy and ball placement. That's for sure. Football IQ is off the charts. Obviously, with his dad and being around football his whole life. So I'm not too worried. Um, the arm strength is a bit of a concern. That's what a lot of people talk about. That's like the most people worry that he might not be able to throw his receivers downfield. A little bit limited athleticism and takes way too many sacks.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue. Those are only going to be highlighted more at the NFL level where it's a lot faster. Again, now projected to be the second QB off the board, which obviously with the class that it is, I definitely agree that he should be the second QB off the board. I know that a lot of people have him going to Cleveland, and as we alluded to before, you know, daddy's going to get involved in where he goes. He doesn't want to go where in a bad situation. I'm not too sure how he's going to ruin that
I don't know
really,
about
but
that. I don't know about that. He seemed fairly quiet so far. Like maybe sure if it's a giant situation where he's like the fourth QB on the depth chart, like if he's behind Tommy DeVito even.
no, I don't think he would be
No,
that.
he would never be behind him.
I think they'd cut DeVito.
Yeah.
I know that he was tendered, so all his money's guaranteed, but it's only a couple $1 million. So I think at that point you're cutting DeVito. But I'm just saying that for me, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I think having him number 3 is just not not a great look. And if the Giants don't take him, does he slide to, does Vegas take him at 8? Do the
Yeah,
Saints go after a quarterback? Is that somewhere where they might say, we're gonna go grab a quarterback with Derek Carr, 1 foot out the door? Or, people have him, does he slide all the way down to the end of the first and like Steelers at 21? Then there's also the Rams that could
yeah.
potentially like come into play. Like that would be, imagine Shedeur in LA, all that
Mhm.
spotlight in LA, like that would be a circus. So honestly, it's going to be interesting. I feel like he either goes in the top 8 or he drastically falls and goes like Aaron Rodgers style down the ladder.
Fab, what do you think? What do you think it's like? Talk about the Browns, and then maybe what, like, again, I want to elaborate on the scenarios where he would fall further.
I think the Browns should be drafting him because the Browns are in a QB purgatory right now and they have no cap space. So this makes no sense to me at all for them not to draft Shadour Sanders at 2, because they've been clear that they want to get out of the whole Deshaun Watson sweepstakes or whatever that is right now. And today there was a ridiculous rumor about them trading for Dak Prescott or whatever. I don't know, but they're just
That's NBA Centel ish.
yeah, yeah, whatever. But rumors are circulating, so sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. And we've been hearing about it last year too. That even the whole Deshaun Watson thing, like they want out of that horrible contract. If you have a good QB on a rookie deal, it makes things a lot easier. So if I'm Cleveland, I'm taking Shadour Sanders. To be honest with you, um, I hope he falls to the Giants at 3, but that's a different conversation. I think Shadour Sanders is probably the best quarterback in the draft, and I said before that Cam Ward's the best passer. But Shadour Sanders has that anticipatory throw.
Yes.
He
Yes.
has precision, and even though he's taken so many sacks, he still put up very good numbers. He still put up very good numbers under pressure. He doesn't have maybe the best deep ball, you know what? But his 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 completion percentage is off the charts, and that's not a mistake when you do it consistently for so many years. I know Cam Ward was joking. He's like, "Yeah, it's because you're throwing out in the flat all the time. No wonder you have a high completion percentage." But you know what? At the same time, those types of throws matter, where you know that you're going to be under pressure and you can bail
Yes.
out and you can throw to the open man. So uh, I don't. I like him a lot as a prospect. I came around a little bit in the last few weeks, to be honest with you. And the beginning of last year, I was very much out on Sanders because I didn't want anything to do with the circus, and I was just all in on Cam Ward. But he's a very, very, very smart quarterback that always translates well to the NFL. So I see him being as probably the best quarterback prospect in this entire group.
Um,
That we yes, sorry, go ahead.
Amazing in the red zone.
Yeah,
71% completion percentage in the red zone.
yeah,
6.3 off target percentage. 18 touchdowns.
yeah, and he played behind a very bad offensive line too
Yes.
at Colorado. So that I'm not
Did he
saying that it's
play? I don't remember the schedule. Did he play very many good teams
So that's a
last
good
year?
point. Yeah.
that
So
yeah.
that's a good
Like,
point. I don't. He played Kansas State, which were Kansas State was pretty decent. Utah would have been in the schedule. Like Utah is always tough, but the Big 12 was, they kind of had like a down year. So like I think that's a fair point, Knack. Like the Big 12 was a bit of a down year, and um, that allows some of their wide receivers to obviously Hunter, but even some of their other wide
Mhm,
receivers to kind of eat on
yeah,
lesser competition. Um, the worst case scenario, I had put Andy Dalton, Teddy Bridgewater. That is alluding to the fact that he's not a guy who could drive the ball as well as maybe some of the other top prospects, and also can't necessarily be elusive. Like Teddy Bridgewater is one I could really see where, Bridgewater, when everything was perfect, looked fantastic. But if you got him out of his spot, he had to kind of extend to win. That wasn't something that he was able to do. Yeah, yeah, Fab.
just I was reading some comps. I know we said Joe Burrow light and all this other stuff. I actually read a comp about Drew Brees. He's a precision pocket passer, and I was like, that's
Hmm.
obviously that is an ideal scenario, but it's when you're just comparing their traits. I mean, it does make a little bit more sense than the other comps you've had.
I'm honestly curious to watch him in the NFL and see how it translates and if he could do it and be, you know, a franchise QB. I'm rooting for him because it would be good for the NFL.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he has the highest floor,
Yeah.
and maybe his ceiling is not quite as high as Cam Ward's. But
So, but
yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
ask you, where are you drafting him as opposed to last year's quarterbacks
Absolutely. I think it's the same thing. It's like it's a struggle between Penix and
and
JJ.
JJ?
Yeah.
Um, like he has a very similar profile to Nick's, where Nick's got penalized and docked a lot for kind of throws at the line of scrimmage. So like that there was a big book on that from him. JJ for me is like probably last, like in terms of if I were to peg him versus like Cam Ward and Shadour Sanders, and I'm struggling between Penix. I'd even put Nix over JJ. I'd probably put Nix
Yeah,
over.
well, that's you see
Mhm.
like that. That's why it's a hard exercise because I'd probably put Bo Nix ahead of all of these guys, and then Sanders would fall right underneath,
So
as well as Cam Ward.
before we move on to the next QB, just one scenario I just thought about now. What if the Niners took Shadour Sanders, saying that they don't want to pick Brock Purdy?
Well, has been reports that
Sign,
they're negotiating, like they're talking on a new deal, and it's going to be
Yeah.
a big figure. The problem I see there is the Niners got pillaged this summer, and they're going to need to spend high draft picks in key
yeah,
positions. So that's where I don't think where they picking.
11th.
11th.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to take a QB at 11. I think for them it's just not going to make sense.
I
I think
think
they're
if
going to.
Sanders drops, he drops all the way to the Steelers.
Yeah, like I said, my wild cards are if he gets past the Giants decide they don't want him, gets past the Browns. Like the team I'm really looking at is Vegas if they don't want to go Genty, and then you have the Saints, right? Then after that, like most of these teams are not picking a quarterback, and then you have again Pittsburgh, Rams.
Pittsburgh and Ram. Yeah, to me,
Yeah.
Saints is a must. Like if the Saints are there, man, they have to, because
Yeah, I don't think like that's what I'm saying. Like
they're
the
not going
Saints
anywhere
are
with
Saints are
Derek
nine.
Carr. Saints are ninth. Yeah.
Yeah, so 8 and 9. That's my wild card right there. It's like Vegas,
Okay.
and
Carolina's eighth, so it's Vegas 6, Jets 7. Jets. I
oh
wouldn't.
6, excuse me.
Yeah, Jets. I don't
Jets
know.
too.
Like
Yeah,
Jets. I
Jets
don't know.
are
Mm, like, mm,
You're
like
right.
I. You know, I
Jets
don't
are
know.
good.
Jets could turn around and be like, sure,
Yeah. Ultimately, my preference is don't care if we have Jameis. A Giants fan perspective, don't care if we have Jameis. Don't care if we have Russ. Get a QB. I even said it last year. Just get a QB. I don't know if we're going to be in this position again next year. If they are, adios to Joe Shane and Brian Dable. But I personally like Shedeur
Or would
enough.
you take Shadur at 3, or would you prefer to wait and maybe draft some of these other guys we're going to talk about in the second or third round,
So I
and
think that,
and maybe go for, and then if you do bottom out, you go for a better class in 2026.
yeah. So I mean, great segue. I would definitely take Shedeur at 3 because I like him that much as a
Yeah.
prospect. So I think it's a great segue to move on to Jaxson Dart out of Ole Miss. So my buddy Ryan Brown is a big fan of Jaxson Dart. He came through the USC system and kind of had some struggles there. They obviously they went through with the Caleb Williams transfer when he was from Oklahoma, so that's where Jaxson Dart went to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, who's also has some ties to USC. So comparison I have, I know Fab, you laughed at this, but Carson Wentz, either best case or worst case. Carson Wentz at his height could be best case, and then Carson Wentz, after kind of his Eagles struggles, where he was MVP at first and he got injured. What do you guys think of that? Any other comparisons that you guys have heard? Best case,
Ba-
worst case.
Baker Mayfield.
That's a very good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one a lot.
I got a bad one. I got Gardner Minshew as a comp. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you. I think that's more on the low end if he doesn't perform all that well.
Yeah.
I even like a little bit of a Big Ben to some extent as well. I find just because he has a big arm and he's able like he's mobile enough to create plays, but like obviously Big Ben was never going to run away, never going to speed down the field, but has that ability to kind of make plays and
Yeah.
plays with confidence, right? He shows a lot of confidence in his play. I find he's not scared to make the
Moxie.
to
A lot of
throw.
moxie.
But obviously that leads into some cons where he tries to do too much at times, and that's what's going to lead to mistakes. And in the NFL, like we said, it's faster and it's going to be, multiplied. So, um, and very big risk taker. So he's going to take risks. He's more of a project QB. I find he's going to need some development, but definitely could be good in the league.
Yeah, there was a game against Florida where he threw 3 picks in the last minute. Last
Yeah.
minute of the game, like 3 picks. Like they threw a pick, they somehow got the ball back when it was a turnover. Threw another one. He unraveled. So Fab, what are your thoughts on? I know you were liking Dart a little bit for the Giants' perspective. He felt like a Giants type QB right early on in the draft, and I want to repeat something I said early on in the intro where Dart has been climbing only after the college football season. During
Yeah.
the college football season, he was squarely pegged as kind of a day 2 pick. So, Fab, your thoughts?
Well, we saw that with JJ McCarthy last year too, right? Like right after the season ended, right before the draft, he was rising up everybody's draft board, and I was excited for the JJ McCarthy prospect last year because I figured we might be able to catch him in the second round, and clearly that wasn't the case. Um, Listen, he rated very high. He rated very high in throws against the blitz in play action. So that has to obviously count for quite a bit, especially in the NFL right now. He he's a big boy, man. I think he's a bit more of a project than anything else. And from a Giants perspective, I know that Brian Dable enjoys having his project QBs with Josh Allen and so on and so forth. But I wouldn't feel comfortable taking him with the third pick. I know he's been rising up draft
Yeah.
boards quite a bit. I think this is one of those scenarios where it's I think the gap between him and Sanders is bigger than what people say. Like if the Giants do end up, or a QB needy team does end up trading back into the first round to get him, that's great. I know I've seen a lot of mocks of him going to the Steelers at 21. I think that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. But he wouldn't normally get a first round talent apart from the fact that he does play a position that is very, very needy. And if we compare him to the QBs of last year, like we've been doing so far on the podcast, I think he would slot after all of them. Like after Bo Nix, after JJ Penix, after Penix, after JJ McCarthy. Um, I think there is a project here, but I don't think he should be drafted and starting in week 1. That's for sure.
I think it's very fair. One of the weaknesses I had was very RPO laden
I was
offense,
going to say
so
that.
it's very gimmicky, like with a lot of college offenses. So that's why he's probably much better against the blitz, much
Hmm.
better in play action. And Lane Kiffin has had so yeah, Lane Kiffin to remind everyone was the coach for the Raiders back when they drafted Jamarcus Russell, and we all know how that turned out. And in terms of some other QBs that he was the OC, USC was Matt Leinart. And Ryan's gonna kill me for this because these are all like USC QBs that he absolutely loves. But Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez, Matt Barkley, Matt Corral from Old Miss a few years ago from the 2022 draft. Obviously, none of these
But
guys
Corral
really.
wasn't Corral North Carolina?
Yes, I always confuse Matt Corral with Matt Corral was.
I thought he
Oh,
was North Carolina.
I'm confusing him with. No, he was Ole Miss. Yeah, he went. He
Sorry,
played for the Panthers.
would you say this is a mixed track record or a
All right.
bad track record?
Very bad track record.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
This is awful. Like and
like
and
what
it's
It,
what, what
awful.
part of what part of that track record is good? Mark Sanchez, Matt Leinart? Like they're not
No,
bad, but they're not franchise altering quarterbacks.
so again, like from what I know from the Lane Kiffin offense is that it's not geared towards developing QBs
Yeah.
versus like a Shadour Sanders where it's Pat Shermer, it's more of a pro style offense. This is very
Yes.
much like hut clap, fake to the running back RPO, and then right away
Yeah.
where your first read is. So I think
Hmm.
that could be like that's not gonna get you to start right away to all your points, right? So I think it's very rich. Like Giants, maybe if they want to trade back. I'm curious what you guys think. Actually, like, is it Giants if they want to trade back? Nak, I want to know what you think in terms of like
Trade back in?
yeah, trade back in. Let's say they want to get him like later in the later rounds.
Yeah. Well, that's what honestly, that's how I feel he's probably going to get picked. Is going to be one of these QB needy teams that decide, hey, let's go for another position. We have like again, like the Giants, perfect scenario. We have Russell Wilson, we have Jameis Winston. Can we afford to, hey, let's take an Abdul Carter or a Hunter and then either trade back into the second round, or your second round pick is quite high. So again, this is the type of guy that's not, yes, he's going up draft boards, but that's just for mock drafts. Like he could
Yeah.
definitely be back in the second round. And if a couple of QBs are off the board in the top of the second, like again, you're not going to have the Titans doubling up. You won't have the Browns doubling up. I could see the Giants waiting and saying, "Oh, you know what? We'll take Jaxson Dart in the second and kind of see what happens." But I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams, QB needy teams, that might try to cut back inside before the Giants pick again in the second round. So if the Giants really do like him and don't take Shedeur, they'll likely have to trade back into the first.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on to another SEC quarterback, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. So this guy is super polarizing. I put a best case comp of Tyrod Taylor or less refined Justin Fields. And worst case comp, I think this could be really interesting. Cordell Stewart.
Yeah, slash.
So like his worst case is doesn't cut it as a QB, or doesn't cut it as a full-time QB, so they end up using him as like a wide receiver, running backs, again, slash, like just all around the ballpark, pure football player. Fab, what are your thoughts on Jalen Milroe?
Wasn't he asked during the combine if he wants to play a different position or an out of position?
He's
I
been
read
asked
somewhere.
that in college many
Yeah,
times.
wide receiver, to play wide
Yeah,
receiver.
yeah. So that makes a lot of sense.
I loved his interview, by the way, when he rebutted that.
Great, but he's great, like
Yeah, no, he's
good kid.
Yep.
elite athleticism. I think we all know that by now. And also fantastic, like probably the strongest arm in the draft amongst the quarterbacks. I think it's very unrefined. I think we're looking at a player that needs a lot of polishing before he can be a consistent NFL starter. Um, you were talking about comps. One of the comps that I read, and I don't know if I agree with this or not, but like Malik Willis, so that could be an interesting sort of scenario, I guess. But
That's a worst case. That's a really, really worst
that is
case.
a worst case. That
Mind
is
you, he was
definitely
good
a
with the
worst.
Packers, but
Yeah, in relief,
yeah, in
for
relief.
Jordan Love when he got injured. I think this is a project. I think this is definitely a project quarterback. I think there's a lot of unknowns with him from an inconsistent standpoint, and obviously he needs a lot of refinement with his mechanics. But I think the athletic prospect is here. I think like you makes me think of Anthony Richardson a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to really go
Goated
down that
comp.
route again. Yeah, I would be obviously unless the price is right. Like if he's there in the third or fourth round, and I'm a QB needed team and I haven't gone after him yet, I could take a flyer on Jalen Milroe if I don't see any other position or player of value. But I don't see him creeping into the second round. To be honest with you, I think this is more of a round 3, round 4 type guy.
Knock. What do you think?
Yeah, his accuracy is not great. Needs to definitely improve on the short to mid range throws, should I say? And definitely needs to read defenses quicker. So that goes back to holding on to the ball too long. But as Fab said, cannon arm, could throw the ball 60 yards with a flick of a wrist, and he's got a beautiful long ball. So that meshes well with teams that have go route wide receivers. Um, but yeah, I think to what he said, it's a project. Like you're not coming in starting day one. It's probably going to take a couple years before he's able to take control of an NFL offense. But to Fab's point, he's like a wild card. Like you grab him, and if it doesn't work out, or you even said it too, like slash type guy, right? You just play him in a maybe play him in a different position, and can still be dangerous for your football team.
Yeah.
I can't wait for him to be Joe Webb, where he's eligible to be used at tight end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I want
or
I
the
want a fantasy
Saints. Who's the
I want a
Saints guy?
fantasy championship
Taysom
with
Hill.
that.
Taysom Hill. Exactly. Another
Taysom
comp.
Hill would be that's a really good comp. I
That
don't
Yeah.
is
know.
a good comp
Yeah, that's a
actually. That
Taysom
great.
works a
Taysom
lot
Hill
better
style.
than Anthony Richardson.
I think in terms of team and where, so obviously like he would you'd pick any of the guys from last year over Jalen Milroe for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of teams that give him the best opportunity to be a starter at some point, the Raiders for me would be number one. Again, Chip Kelly knows how to work with mobile quarterbacks. We saw what he did even in the league with Colin Kaepernick and Michael Vick. I don't know, the Giants maybe with a different regime. I think they would fumble that. And Dable's worked in Alabama, so he
I
has
was going to
that.
say there's that
Yeah,
Bama connection that
there's
exists
that
there.
Bama connection. To me, it's actually a telling sign if they trade for it. They trade whether back into the first or they just pick him in the second. That's a really telling sign that they actually do believe in him. And if they don't,
Yeah.
well, it's a telling sign that they don't want him. I just don't see him as a Steelers pick in the first. I think that's too rich, right? Like as,
They would
as a
no
first
in the
round.
first. No, I don't think he's he would be
No,
well. I don't think he would be well. First of all, Tomlin doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks.
exactly.
So to take on a project like this, it's not going to work, and they would just ruin him. They wouldn't know what to do with him.
Moving on to Tyler Shough. So it's Tyler Shough, but somehow it turns into Tyler Shough. So that was kind of
I don't. I mean, too. I was weird. I thought people were mispronouncing it. And Tyler Shough.
yeah. So Tyler Shough out of Louisville. Comparisons. I put a poor man's Jared Goff. So he has the height, has the nice power arm, but kind of ability to maneuver out of the pocket when in trouble. Similar to Goff could be an issue. But again, like Goff, it's funny, we sleep on him, and I think like we kind of, he was a number one overall pick at one point, or a second overall pick, I believe. Wentz
Goff
was
is great,
first.
man. Goff deserves a lot of respect.
Goff was number one.
Goff was number one. Yeah, Goff was number one. Wentz was
two.
second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario comp: Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler. Again, kind of those like tall, lanky quarterbacks, big arms, but again, those guys are types you just blitz the living hell out of them, and they can't do much out of it. So played at Louisville in the ACC. Nak, what do you think? This is a really interesting prospect.
I had comped with at his high point Carson Wentz, and at his low would be Drew Lock.
Yeah,
that would be my comp. But look, he's got the ideal NFL size: 6'5", 230. Like, this guy is a big kid, and he can launch the ball. He moves pretty well for a big guy, which was like surprising to me. But very injury prone. Had a few injuries in college, so I don't know if that's going to translate. Erratic accuracy, I found as well. Can be hot and cold, so misses too many routine throws. And some decision making issues that needs to be addressed. Again, this guy here, look, it's going to be one of those guys again in the probably likely third, fourth round kind of quarterbacks where, again, a team missed out on a quarterback and they're going to look to take a shot or, fill the QB room with a body. Teams that just need to, those late round picks. He could even, I see him even going maybe as far down as the fifth round. Nothing. Again, you're hearing the same teams that might go after him. Steelers, there's Rams, there's different teams that have looked into him. But look, not as flashy as the others we spoke about.
Fab, this guy's old, man. He's turning 26 in September, and he was in the same recruiting class as Trevor Lawrence, and he backed up Justin Herbert.
Yeah, he's the he's the Van Wilder of quarterbacks. He's been in college for like 8 years. But that has a lot to do with, I think, COVID, and it also has a lot to do with the fact that he hasn't really played a full season. He's been injured quite a bit over his career, and the issue I have with Shough, right? Shough. Let's go with Shough.
Like oysters.
Shucking
and oysters. So obviously there's the injury aspect, right? And can we assume at this point in his career that his talent has been tapped out? Like, this is exactly. There's not much more you can develop out of a quarterback at this stage in their career. He did have a little sputter of excitement at Oregon in 2020 when he started the season, but then since then, I think he's just been riddled with injuries and inconsistency. And I give the guy credit for even making it this far and still believing in his dream and all that stuff, and making to being a name that's going to be considered in the NFL draft. I think that's fantastic. But from an NFL career, you're looking at a career backup, career third stringer potentially. I hope I eat my words. I really do. I don't want to pin the guy. I don't want to pin him in a negative spot right off the bat over here. But you have to look at his comps, which I actually read is more also comparable to Blake Bortles. Which again, you look at the size, look at the arm strength, because does have pretty good arm strength. So
Yeah.
I agree with Knack. I think this is more of a fourth round type of player, day 3 guy, and nothing beyond that. I don't think so.
The career arc in college is very similar to Michael Penix. The difference is that Penix like absolutely blew it out of the water with Washington.
Mhm.
Like if Shough
Yeah.
really wanted to move up, he would have had to. We had to see more production. And for someone who's 25 years old, 3,200 yards, 23 TDs, 6 INTs in the ACC, would have expected better. And even he played in Texas Tech in the Big 12, right? And like he's barely above 60% completion percentage. So you're gonna be that old. You really have to show. You have to have amazing stats. So this will be an interesting one. This is one where like even teams that are not in the market for a QB right away, but maybe looking at one like down the line for like a backup or something, they're gonna start looking at. So it's too hard to predict where he'll go. It could go anywhere. So then we have kind of the rest of the group. They kind of all get bundled in together. We'll go one by one. We'll go a bit quicker. Quinn Ewers, Texas. I saw a comparison of Colt McCoy, which I thought was really interesting. Big arm, tough competitor. My issue with him was that the team looked better with Arch Manning. That's like kind of the thing that like is going to be hard for him to shake through. And his pro day was today. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was like really nice deep pass that he had to. I don't know if it was Matthew Golden, but it was like a duck. It was like
duck.
it was like wobbling.
Oh yeah, why did everyone promote that one of all throws? Like, yeah, it was a deep throw, but man, that thing was in the air.
There was nothing about that pass that was nice. Like I just saw it flapping around. And I'm like, that looks like something I threw.
Yeah, exactly. Any thoughts on Quinn Ewers?
Look, he's got arm talent.
Yeah.
We besides that duck that we just spoke about, but look, smooth throwing motion. I would say, and did show that he could pick apart some defenses in rhythm in college when he got into a rhythm, but him too battled injuries as well, and last year also missed some time. I don't know. He might need. He probably would have benefited from another year in college, to be honest.
Transfer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he could have. I don't know. Maybe he should have stayed down one more year, and then maybe he could have gone up the board. But yeah, I'm
No,
not like.
but Arch Manning is starting next year. So
No. But he could have again transferred. He could have gone
yeah.
somewhere
Okay.
else to
Yeah.
start. But maybe he would have been better off staying in college one more year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. He's very inconsistent with his decision making. Like after his first read, you find his mechanics really shut down quite a bit. I think that's the biggest developmental issue on his end, and he was having some problems with under pressure as well. This guy was touted to be like one of the top picks, like as of last
Yeah,
year, and he really fell off quite a bit.
He was a
I
5-star
saw it.
recruit. 5-star
Yeah.
recruit, number one QB, 5-star recruit, and it's like, interesting, really.
Well, who knows? If he gets drafted by the right team, who knows? Maybe Quinn Ewers can turn it around. But I think the fact that when Archie Manning came in and you saw and he lost that team, I think that's very significant. But then again, I feel like that also happens in college quite a bit too. I'm thinking about Alabama with Tua, and I'm thinking about with Jalen Hurts, and and all that. So I don't know if that's going to translate necessarily poorly to the NFL.
Yeah.
But this could be another later round pick that could end up turning good for the right team.
Watch the Cowboys draft him because I don't think they have a. Do they have a backup QB? I think we talked about it last.
no,
No,
like a
Cooper went
nobody.
to
There's like a nobody QB.
yeah.
Danucci or something like.
No, Danucci's
No,
not
not
there.
even.
Yeah, watch
I think Danucci's with the Broncos.
the Broncos. Watch the Cowboys draft him to kind of just
Be
from
the
that
backup.
that Texas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Would be a very
team.
Jerry pick.
Yeah, exactly. Next is our boy Kyle McCord that we saw live when we went to Boston College.
We did.
Kind of like a Jimmy Garoppolo, Chad Pennington vibe with him, like really super accurate. Fab, any thoughts?
I got Kirk Cousins vibe with him. I don't know. His stats really jump off the page for me. The fact that he played really well in Ohio State in his junior year, and then again in Syracuse, and I know it's the ACC, I know it's a different conference, but um, I, I I think this is I think this is a good late round value. I don't think this is getting enough talk, to be honest with you. he does lack that mobility. That's why the comps of Jimmy Garoppolo, Chad Pennington, and Kirk Cousins make a lot of sense. But he's accurate. He can throw the deep ball. He can very, very good accuracy. I don't hate this pick at all. As a later round pick too. I think this is value as well.
Yeah, I don't think he had great arm strength though. I don't think he's a great deep ball thrower. Um, my comp was Mac Jones. That's what I
Yeah,
kind of
that's
see him. That's what I kind of see him as. He's a good decision maker. Doesn't take unnecessary risks per se, but again, limited mobility. Doesn't not a good playmaker outside of the pocket. And just like he lacks like high end traits. I would say. I think he's a career backup in the NFL. I believe. Like he's not. There's definitely no starter potential. I don't see starter potential. Um, but definitely, like you said, one of those guys where late round people need to fill a room, need a good backup. That could be him.
that's what Orlovsky said. Like he's gonna be in the league for 10 years. I see Fab, I love the Kirk Cousins one, because I could see someone who drafts a QB, who drafted QB last year or this year early, and then they take Kyle McCord, and McCord ends up being the better player, similar to what happened with Cousins and RG3. So
RG three.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more high on him just because of like the accuracy, 4,800 yards, 34 TDs at Syracuse, and he got run out of Ohio State a little bit, but he was still pretty good last year. So will be interesting. Speaking of Ohio State, Will Howard, national champion Will Howard, who his lone season at Ohio State, 73% completion percentage, 4,000 yards, 34 passing TDs. Man, he played with a ton of talent at OSU. I love the comp of Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Athletic, big quarterback, dual threat guy. This and
he's
Tone Tone
huge,
Tone Diggs was talking about it in McAfee Knack. Like this guy would be a perfect Steeler.
bro. 6'5", 240. Does it remind you of anyone?
Yeah, yeah,
Like who does that remind you
100%,
of? The person I
100%.
saw play for 18 years.
Moxie beyond belief.
Yeah, they actually they took him out. They took out Emeka.
Ibuka,
They took out the running back
Judkins.
Judkins. Yeah, they took out quite a few guys from Ohio State last night, and Will Howard was one of them. And they were right behind him today. Was Tomlin Khan right behind him as he was throwing at his pro day. So yeah, look again. This could be another guy, maybe fourth, fifth round again, and like just taking a flyer on a guy. But again, he had a sick 4 game stretch this season, and then getting them into the finals, had great playoffs. So look, it could be a guy that, man, you take a chance and hopefully he becomes what you're looking for. But yeah, I definitely love this. Definitely love the size. Definitely ideal frame for a QB. Um, Too many turnovers though. He does turn over the ball a little bit too much and struggles a little bit in with reading defenses. But again, these are things that could be worked on at the NFL level. I just feel again. Yeah, I know he said typical Steeler, but I don't know when you need a quarterback that needs work. Like I feel like that's not the place for you. They need someone like at the top. You know.
Um, go for it, Fab.
I saw a comp to Mason Rudolph, which is just perfectly in line with the Steelers, I suppose.
Let me
Did you
just
see
get.
me? Or are you just trolling?
No, I swear to
I
God.
saw it too.
I saw. Yeah, I mean, I
Too.
think the
He's
issue.
pretty big.
Yeah, I think the issue is his lower body mechanics, and he's also going to be a little bit older too as a rookie. I think he's going to be about 24 years old, which is not that old, but older. Yeah, this is another 3-4, around 3-4 prospect. This could turn into something, but I'm not really. I'm not so high based off the comparisons, based off of the only really one good year of supreme accuracy and completion percentage. Um, and yeah, but take out that 4 game stretch that he had with Ohio State, and would we even be talking about him in the draft? Again, this is another one of those late surgers because Will Howard wasn't really on anyone's radar necessarily at the beginning of last year, and now all of a sudden he's he's expected to be drafted this year. So I'm not super high on him from translating that into an NFL talent. I think we're looking at just another backup.
Very fair. Next one, Riley Leonard. I'm going to give to you, Fab, because the comp I saw, Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones.
It's perfect. If
Josh
you look at
Dobbs too.
Josh Dobbs too is a good one. Daniel Jones mostly because they both played at Duke, and Leonard has his last season of eligibility at Notre Dame. But if you look at their stats, extremely identical. Both like fairly athletic guys. 17 rushing touchdowns this year. I don't know if you guys saw the. Was it the national championship game or the I think it was the national championship game. I think he ran the ball like 10 straight times to start the game. He's competitive as hell.
This is Tim Tebow.
Yeah, I saw that one too. I think that's really good.
Yeah, this is a right arm
That's
Tim Tebow.
really good.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about this. Do you want me to give my analysis or my two cents?
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones.
That's your guy, bro.
I mean, these are this is your tight end, running back, quarterback hybrid over here. This is the guy. 17 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. I mean, come on. I mean, good for you.
Look, Daniel Jones had
Daniel Jones is going to be a very good backup.
He had a good arm. He was competitive. He was tough. He didn't shy away from anything. But again, it's the same mechanics needed refinement, and he never got there. Accuracy issues, and injury concerns. This is like carbon copy Daniel Jones.
And I think something we have to remind maybe ourselves, myself specifically, but also even the viewers too. It's like when teams are drafting players, they're drafting backups, they're drafting third stringers. Totally. Like these are guys that they need in the locker room. They need to be taking part and getting the twos ready, not necessarily playing with the ones all the time. So guys like this are going to be useful regardless, right? And this is just going to be another one of those depth sort of positions that, you need depth at quarterback. We see it all the time. You need a good backup that can come in at any given moment, sometimes even a third stringer. So this is just one of those scenarios too, where Riley Leonard, like he could play a role and have a long-standing career in the NFL. It just won't necessarily be a starting role.
Yeah, the only thing he doesn't compare with Daniel Jones is he won't get a $180 million contract one day.
You never know.
The Giants could take him in the fifth round.
Joe Shane, if Joe Shane somehow finds himself,
there's no link. Okay, to Notre Dame, there's no link. It's not gonna happen.
But there is for Duke.
Last one is Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. I think this is an easy one. Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah. Not as elite of traits, but the lefty, you have to say it, the fact that they're both Samoan, Hawaiian.
They both don't have good arm strength.
This would be perfect in Miami. Like, just get a carbon copy of Tua in case when he gets injured, right? Like, I've been telling Guido.
He's short too, though. He's like 5'11", I think.
Yeah, he's 5'10".
Yeah, he's short. And yeah, like, look, it's the combine. He didn't have a very good combine, but I've been wishing this into existence for Guido. Like, this makes perfect sense. So,
do we really want another guy who's going to underthrow Tyreek?
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I don't know.
Like, I know he's getting older, but like
that's
the arm strength is very comparable too, right? Like, do you really want a carbon copy of that? Maybe not.
Is Tyreek even going to be there after? Like, there's been a lot.
Yeah, this is very true. But again, the shortness really bothers me.
For sure. Boy, that was good. We that was a deep dive. We went through, what is it? What do I call it? 10 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So hope that was informative for all the listeners. Honestly, I think this is an underrated class. I know it's been talked about a little bit compared to the 2021 and 2022 class, but I think this is going to be a better class. And I foresee at least two guys who will be starters, and I think Cam Ward has a chance, and even Shedeur, depending on the situation, has a chance to be at the very least a 5 to 10 year starter potentially. So that'll do it for us. You disagree, Fab? Or
no, I disagree with 5 to 10 years. I think it's going to be longer for Shadour Sanders.
I mean, I hope so too. But
anyways, but we spoke about that already. We're an hour in. We got to end the show, Roger.
Yeah. You did a face.
I'm just I can't help my facial expressions sometimes. My emotions get the best of me.
So that'll do it for today's show. Thanks, Knack. Thanks, Fab. So again, keep tuning into us. Next week, we're going to do the running back deep dives. This is going to be a really good running back class. So we're going to probably go again another 8 to 10 deep. Thank you for joining us. Always follow us on YouTube, Spotify, at the Bush League Huddle. And we are out. See you next time.
Solid.
This is an underrated class. I don't think this gets enough. This gets enough bump. There is some quality over here in quarterbacks.
It's the talk, right? You start talking of things and you start hearing these names, maybe talking these names, and everyone kind of convinces themselves. Like, I don't know, I'm not sold just yet. I can't wait for these guys to get on the field, though. I'm always excited for that. The draft is always fun. Can't
Best
wait for
time
the
of year.
draft. Can't wait for that. Should be a good one, but no one knows anything at the end of the day.
Indeed. Have a good evening, everyone.
Peace out.
Goodbye.